Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to look at this red band here on the bottom too. That's where the smoke affected the protein in the meat, the myoglobin, and it preserved it. It's a red color. So even though this is fully cooked, the outer edge looks like it's still raw. Isn't that interesting? That's what real barbecue looks like, and that's what good barbecue looks like. And that's what I want to teach you to make on this show. Today I'm going to be cooking a brisket. Now a brisket is a very, very large slab of meat. The one I have is a mediocre size. It's only about 10 pounds. We're going to cook this thing up, get it all smoked just the right way. And that's what this video is about. This is about how to smoke a brisket, how to get a brisket to come out with that really deep, thick red band on the outside of the meat that shows that it's been smoked properly, and how to get it to come out where it's just falling apart tender. If it's juicy, falling apart tender, has a beautiful red band, extremely smoky, that's what we look for in a good quality barbecue brisket. This is how we make our barbecue in Texas, folks. This is one of our favorites, the barbecue brisket. So you'll know the brisket is a large cut of meat that comes from the front of the cow underneath. If you'll look at the front of a cow, you'll see two lobes hanging where his front legs are. And those lobes are actually this part of the meat right up here. That is that front lobe on the cow. And so that's what we're using here, is basically the equivalent of a pectoral muscle. They have a tendency to be extremely tough, and they require proper cooking. Now let me show you how I do this. Come on, let's get into it. The brisket that I purchased today is 10 pounds. In fact, it's just a few ounces shy of 10 pounds. When you're out shopping for a brisket, I wanted to show you something that you might want to look for. I went ahead and removed the store label from this, so that wasn't important. And I have taped over the packer's label, in other words, the company that trimmed this from the cow and packed it up. And that is the original packer. This vacuum seal right here is not done in the grocery store. This was done prior to the meat getting to the store at the packing house or the slaughterhouse. What you're looking for, if you're going to look for a decent brisket, is at least USDA choice. So in other words, this little label right here says USDA choice. Now this is a grading system that's used in the United States. If you're not familiar with this, then you need to know there's basically three common grades of meat in the US. That's choice, select, choice, and prime, in that order. Select has very little fat. It's much tougher meat. The choice has a good marbling running through the inside of it and gives you good flavor. It's tender. And the prime, which is usually very expensive, often sold in high-end restaurants. You're going to pay a lot of money for prime, but if you can find prime, good luck. Grab it. And it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you dearly. Now I paid about $4 a pound on this one. These are normally about $5 to $5.50 in this area, and so I got a good deal on it today. They said, I like this, fully trimmed beef brisket. Well, it's still in the original wrapper, so unless this particular packing company has changed the way they cut their meat and pack it, this is just a selling gimmick, nothing more. So, because it looks to me like it's still got most of its fat except right here. We'll see when I open it up. We have everything set up. We just got to get this charcoal lit up. And this is as simple. Light the paper and let it go. Now folks, if you would like, you can do some trimming on that fat on your brisket. Don't remove all of it. Try to leave about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch of fat covering your fat backside. Now this came out of the package exactly like this, and there's some spots where they over trimmed it, like here and here and here and here, and they got a little heavy handed with the knife because I've got some deep cuts, like one here and a couple on the other side. So not a problem. I have very little to trim on this, if any. I'm just going to check mostly that band of fat that runs in between the muscles, see what that looks like, and if it's looking good, I want to get it trimmed up and put on that smoker. A little thick spot here, wherever that's really too thick, you can remove it. And if you got any danglies, never hurts to take those off. I finished trimming my brisket, and right over here in this nice little pot, I have placed all of my fat trimmings with some water, put it on low heat, and I'm going to gently render the fat out of this. Believe it or not, guys, you can use that rendered fat as part of your mop sauce. However, you need to do this part at least a day in advance, because this does take a while to render that down and get just the fat from the water, because we have to then chill it and separate the fat from the liquid below. So let's just give it some time. It's going to produce a wonderful product for us. Never throw anything away. As you can see from the fact that I'm getting white on top of my charcoal, that's a good indicator that this is getting close to ready. Always use gloves when you handle this. And if you'll notice, you can see the flames shooting up through there. Let's go ahead and get our fire down in the firebox in the bottom of it and get this thing heating up. It is certainly Texas summertime in Dallas. We got folks with the music going and out in the yards and having a good time, and that's what it should be. Now folks, down here I have my water pan already filled and our smoke chamber is starting to heat. I'm a little bit winded from running back and forth up and down the stairs. It's good for me. I need the exercise. Well, I need to say something here. When it comes to smoked meats, in order to get the meat smoked exactly right, the consistency, the color of the smoke has to be the right thing. You need a smoke. If it's billowing and it's gray, it's going to provide bad smoking. It's also too hot. You need it to be blue in color. It'll be a light blue. It will be wispy. So you don't want it to billow, and you don't want it to be other than a blue color. Now, if you get nice blue smoke and it's wispy and coming out of there steady, and your temperature is 220 degrees and below, you're ready to smoke. If those conditions aren't met, you need to change what you're doing until they are met. Do not go over 220 degrees. When you're talking about really high grade, high quality smoked meats, right in that zone, that 200 to 220 degree zone, the very best is produced. The deepest red bands, the best tasting meats, right in that zone. So make sure you balance your smoker, and if you do that, you're going to get some really good meat. From there, it's a matter of what do we do to keep the moisture in the meat. We're going to get into that in a minute. That's going to be our mop sauce, and I'll show you how to do a neat mop sauce that works really good. You can use either the tallow, like I am cooking off back here, for your mop sauce, or you can just use regular cooking oil. You can also use other things if you wish. If you wanted to use lard, you can use that. It gives a unique flavor. I prefer to use peanut oil. I use peanut oil and a couple of other ingredients and then make a nice little mop with it, and that keeps the meat from losing too much moisture. And before I run into that, let's mention the moisture loss. I'm not talking about the moisture that steams out of the meat. There's no way you can stop that from happening. I'm talking about the fluid losses that drip from the meat. We're trying to prevent that from happening. So if we can put a nice fat layer on the outside of all of the meat, that prevents that problem from occurring, okay? And it's just a certain way of doing it, and that's the reason we call it a mop sauce. So let's get on with the next step. Come on. Go ahead and open this up. If you'll notice on the side, I went ahead and closed my damper. I had to do that to finally get it to come down. I want to give it just a little bit of air, and we're going to get some wood chunks up in here. Now, I place my wood chunks on the sides of the fire, up on the metal itself, not directly in the coals. By doing this, it gives a slow smolder action, and it does a really good job. I've gotten good results with this technique over the years, so I stick with it. There we go. And I'm also going to add a little bit of charcoal to this to keep my fire up, because it's burned down a lot. So about another 12 pieces. This has been about an hour and a half getting the fire just right and the temperature just right to cook with. My temperature is right. I'm between 200 and 220. My meat is ready. Smoker's ready. I just got to get it in there, salted, and we're up and cooking. Now folks, to protect our meat from losing moisture as we cook it, we want something that blocks that moisture from coming out. Something that has plenty of oil in it is what we use, and we call it a mop. The idea here is to give something that's an oil or a fat that protects the meat from moisture loss, not through evaporation, but what drips out. It helps to keep that from happening. And at the same time, you need some acid to help break the rind. Some people also add spices. I have cayenne and salt. I love to use those two in my mop. Okay, so that's what I like to do. The cayenne doesn't really seem hot on the outside of the meat after the amount of cooking we do, plus I just don't use that much. So give this a try. I also have some wine, and I'm going to be using, my proportions are 1 cup of oil, 1/4 of a cup of the vinegar. On my spice, I like to add a couple of teaspoons of cayenne, and sometimes I'll put in some salt, up to a teaspoon. If I use anything like the wine, it's generally 1/4 to 1/2 a cup. Whenever you're doing this, you cook them together over a low temperature in a large pot, and watch it carefully because it can boil over. So be careful, and once it's emulsified together, you can mop that over your meat. Now, I generally cook mine for 15 to 20 minutes at least. I'm trying to get most of the moisture, most of the liquid from the vinegar and the wine cooked out of it. I have combined all of my ingredients. You want to keep your temperature low on this, folks. Be careful and give it time to just boil off, all right? If you don't watch this, if you got your temperature too high, it's going to erupt on you, okay? So remember, when you've got liquids that are like oils and acidic liquid, they act funky when you boil them together. So this is going to release, number 1, a sharp smell in the air. Be prepared for that. And number 2, be prepared for it to boil violently. Folks, once you get that mop sauce made, just take your mop and paint it up over the meat, and you're going to have a good protection against moisture loss. I brought my meat in from the smoker. I boiled some water, and now I'm going to pour the water down in this pan and put that in the oven at 225 degrees and let it finish out until it becomes fork tender. Folks, you want a fork to slide in and out easily, and that way you know that brisket is nice and tender. That's going to take a few hours. Alrighty, there we go. That's in there at 225 degrees. Let it sit in there until it's fork tender. Now folks, every brisket's its own thing, so some of them may take an hour and a half, others may take 3 or 4 hours. Don't heat the oven up. Keep it at 225. If you heat it up, you're going to muck things up, so keep a stable temperature. Now folks, I'm about to pull my brisket out of the oven. The braising is finished. It's nice and tender. I need a place to put it when I pull it out of the braising pan. So what I have here is just a simple sheet pan. I have placed a couple of what's called a pan rack on top of that, and that will allow the meat to be suspended and allow the excess juice to drop down into this pan. I do this because over years of experience I have learned that when you first pull the brisket out, it's going to have a lot of draining to do, and if you have it just on a carving board with a groove in it, a lot of times it'll overflow that. So you'll want to do this first let it drop its excess juice, and then go to cutting it. All right, let's pull that thing out. I have gone ahead, pulled this out of the pan, and got it right up here. Now, one of the things that's really helping is the fact that I allowed this to cool down enough to be handleable, and at the same time, when you do that, it pulls juices back into the meat, and you don't have a lot of dropping. Okay, so we don't have problems controlling the moisture in the meat at this point. That's all taken care of. So it's just a matter of getting the meat cut up and ready to be used. Now, being that this is tender, it's going to be hard to slice, and it's important to note, you can see the strands of the meat, okay? They're running this way, all right? And you always want to cut across the grain. Now, if I cut like this, I'm cutting across the grain, but I'm doing so at an angle. If I cut like this, I'm cutting directly across the grain. My meat will pull apart a little easier, and it'll be more delicate on the fork and on the plate. I recommend you doing it the way I'm about to do it. There we go. I'm trying to get cut through this so I don't tear the meat. It's really wanting to come apart on me. So let's pull some of this back. I want everyone to see. Look at the band in that meat, that red band. That's what we've been talking about all along, and it is the mark of true excellence in barbecue. That is exactly what we're looking for when we're looking for fine quality barbecue. Ouch, that's hot. Oh my goodness. Absolute delicious goodness right there, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we were going for all day long. It's a 10-hour cook. You got to be patient. But the end result is this most magnificent. Oh, they're just falling apart, quite literally. Oh, God. That flavor. One of my favorite goodies are barbecue sandwiches, and I'm going to do that in just a little bit. I'm going to make a chopped beef sandwich. I don't really have to do much chopping. It just falls apart beef sandwich, and I'm going to enjoy my barbecue. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. Hey, if you would, please share the video. If you liked it, you know what to do. How to click the like button. Drop some comments down below and all that good stuff. Also, I do have a Patreon page. If you would take a look at that, that is patreon.com/Stuart Trotter. If you would take a close look at that, it's a very helpful thing for me. It's allowing me to grow my photography and this videography, and also producing really good cooking videos. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Have a good day and enjoy your barbecue. Bye-bye.